Hello everybody, I'm the Cinematologist, diagnosing cinema one movie at a time. Today, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Oktoberfest 2016. And this year is a special year because we get to end this series with a brand new segment of mine that I'd like to call Diagnosis Cinema. When films really are following the same kind of tired cliches, tropes, and all the sort of lackadaisical patterns in film that grow us so weary, somebody needs to have the responsibility to diagnose and study these kinds of cinematic malpractices. And that's where Diagnosis Cinema steps in. And today, to keep in line with the Oktoberfest theme, we present none other than Rob Zombie's Halloween. Since the mid-2000s, it seems that remakes or reboots of films are the highest trending form of film production. Nowadays, we tend to be immediately skeptical and raise an eyebrow whenever a classic property is being remade. We feel that the movie studios ignore our admiration and memories for the original films in exchange for a quick buck on an effortless production. Case in point, Rob Zombie's Halloween. Talk about a movie a lot of people were skeptical about. I feel like people never really thought a remake to Halloween would actually be made, even after the endless amounts of sequels that were produced since the original film. A remake never made sense for Halloween because the original film was so innovative and successful to begin with that to try to recreate that innovation in terror would take nothing short of a miracle. Heavy metal star Rob Zombie had made a name for himself as a new-coming director, having directed several of his own music videos and a couple of grotesque horror films to follow. People initially were at least a little enthusiastic about his vision coming into play. His use of violence and disturbed characters was apparently seen as a favorable style to bring in The Shape of Fear to a whole new fresh take. Heck, even I'll admit that when I first saw the trailers for this film, I was pretty excited. Granted, I was a bit younger at the time, so my sensibilities were a little bit different, but the original film was still one of my favorites. I was interested in seeing if anybody could bring an interesting twist to what I've always considered maybe the greatest horror movie of all time. With that in mind, there was no way Rob Zombie couldn't fail. Even though I really don't like this movie whatsoever, I'll try to compare it to the original as little as possible and judge it on its own merits. So without further ado, here's Rob Zombie's Halloween. The first thing we're introduced to, and unfortunately the first mistake this movie makes, is the Myers family at the very beginning of the film. We're introduced to a dysfunctional environment full of hillbilly cliches and foul language. This plays out as almost a spoof in that I find it really hard to take this scene seriously and feel immersed in the ambience of the setting. Just listen to the dialogue.
Fucking time. I hope she likes cripples.
Bitch, I will crawl over there and I will skull fuck the shit out of you.
Oh, I'll get the crutches for you. See what you did, fucking loudmouth.
That's all that fucker does is cry. Crying shit.
Just like you, that's all you do is cry and
Fuck you and sit it on my pole right now, bitch.
Fuck off.
That sounds like if the Tourette's guy just came back from having his wisdom teeth removed.
Yes! I bought your Colgate toothpaste, the one with tartar control, and it made me feel like a piece of shit! Balls!
And then enter another unfortunate part of this film, the main character. That's right, little Mikey Myers emerges from his room after carrying out some very questionable experiments with animals. This is the first sign of a major problem that we have with this character. Rob Zombie is clearly laying out the warning signs. A dysfunctional family, slaughtering small animals, apparently having a gender crisis, they're all there. The problem with that is that immediately we already understand what's going on and what kind of environment this character is being brought up in. So within the first 5 minutes of the movie, we can already piece together the puzzle to unravel the mystery behind the most iconic killer in cinematic history. Not good. Hell, we're even tempted to sympathize with him, which for the sake of this film isn't favorable. Trust me, I would be a serial killer too if I grew up around this shitlord. Anyway, we go to Michael's school to where we find out he's also picked on by kids at school for having a stripper as a mom.
Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter and let me suck her tits?
Okay, so from what I understand, Rob Zombie seems to have made just about $5 million for directing this film. And writing it. $5 million divided by 110 pages for a script, divided by about 5 lines per page, means that he made about $10,000 to write that line of dialogue. $10,000! Do you know what kind of things can be done with $10,000? You can feed a starving village, you can provide research for a disease, or you can send an underprivileged child to a good school. But no. We got...
Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter and let me suck her tits?
Build an addition on your house.
Suck my dick for a quarter?
Buy your mom a great gift.
Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter?
Hookers and coke.
She'd suck my dick for a quarter and let me suck her tits?
Ah, Jesus. Additionally, this is when Dr. Loomis steps into the picture. Here, he's played by Malcolm McDowell. He and the latex-faced principal discuss with Mrs. Myers what kind of problems are going on with her son.
Oh, God. Oh, this is really sick. Are you saying Michael did this? Michael loves animals. Why would he do this?
Mrs. Myers, typically the thrill of hurting or causing pain to smaller creatures, it's often an early warning sign.
Again with the warning signs. We're past the point of no return already in this movie, and it's not even a third of the way through. The fact that even the characters in the film can see this coming from a rational standpoint limits anything really scary about Michael Myers. Anyway, it isn't long before little Mikey tracks the spy kid into the woods and gives him his just desserts. Sure, it's a brutal scene, but it really isn't that shocking. It's hard to feel bad for this kid who 5 minutes ago we wished his line wasn't $10,000 worth of money. We fast forward to Halloween night, and Michael is anticipating going out trick-or-treating. So Michael's older sister rejects taking him out trick-or-treating in favor of sleeping with her boyfriend who is apparently fresh out of the methadone clinic. This results in what is just a very strange sequence. Moving on. So Michael has to settle with watching scary movies in the living room with Lieutenant Dan, and it makes us wish that we were watching the movie that they are instead of watching this. So he kills Stephen Hawking and then he makes his way upstairs to finish off his sister. Again, the scenes are bloody and brutal, but it's really hard for us as the viewer to really feel terrorized by what's going on screen. We don't care about these characters. Because not only are they unlikable, but not 1 minute of this movie is immersive enough to have us fully engaged and invested in the story of the characters. Let's take a second and recognize the original on this point. The reason the original works from the very first frame is that everything seems normal and familiar. We recognize the quaint neighborhood setting that we can all identify with, and the characters seem realistic enough and genuine enough for us to identify with as well. The subtle props, the costumes, and the cinematography all work together well and create a very realistic environment in which the viewer can be immersed. It all works hand in hand. In the zombie version, everything is so bizarre and over the top that not 1 minute of it feels genuine nor familiar. So we fast forward to Michael being put in a sanitarium after murdering 3 people in his own home. This is where the only interesting part of the movie begins, where Dr. Loomis begins to consult the young Michael Myers. I'll give Rob Zombie credit and at least admit that the scenes here are the most entertaining, and have better dialogue that seems a bit more believable.
Look at my mask.
Oh, wow, beautiful. Yeah. Why is it all black?
Because it's one of my favorite colors.
Well, actually, black isn't a color, is it? It's the absence of color. In the spectrum of colors, you go from black, which is no color, all the way through to white, which is every color.
It almost makes us forget about things like
Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter?
almost. So the nail in the loony coffin comes when Michael gets a hold of a fork and kills one of the orderlies in the cafeteria. Because a mental asylum wouldn't be complete without sharp objects, right? Overwhelmed with pain and anguish, Michael's mother does the one thing that seems most reasonable and selfless. She blows her brains out with an infant child by her side. I'm starting to think Casey Anthony would be a better mother than this one. So after this 90s failed grunge band of a first act, we finally fast forward to what I believe is supposed to be the present day. We go back to the sanitarium where a couple of the orderlies are going to take Michael out of his cell for some quality time with Dr. Loomis. We get some more racist redneck dialogue and a cameo by Danny Trejo as a friendly orderly who used to console Michael through his days in the sanitarium as a boy. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room and talk about the actual fucking elephant in the room. How did Michael become so large? You're telling me that chubby Pillsbury Doughboy Hitler Youth grew up to be that after a 15-year diet of processed cheese?
I smell bullshit.
Also, for some reason, Michael has a fascination with masks that's really only a plot device to get him to wear a mask again when he returns to Haddonfield. Whatever. So Dr. Loomis reveals to Michael that he's no longer going to be supervising him after over 15 years, to which Michael relays our direct emotion toward this film. Not long after that, Michael begins his escape from the sanitarium, killing everyone in sight, until George Lopez comes back to save the day. Or not. So he kills Carlos Mencia, and Loomis is quickly alerted and runs off toward Haddonfield. In the meantime, Michael fills his murderous void by killing the dad from Kenan and Kel on the way home. A quick note, does anybody realize how excruciatingly long this setup is taking? On a serious note, it's really detracting from the development of any of the main characters. Meanwhile, we go back to the plot of the original film and find Laurie and her friends discussing their plans for Halloween night. And unfortunately, that means back to the same old bullshit that Zombie was doing earlier. What we are given in the beginning of the second act isn't very short of a shot-by-shot rehash of the original film's introduction to Laurie Strode. But you've got to give Rob Zombie some credit. He changes things up here. Remember how Laurie Strode was so down-to-earth and conservative in the original? Well, now she's annoying and insufferable. Gotta give Rob Zombie credit for changing things up finally. Aside from being a direct rehash from the scenes of the original film, we're introduced to Annie and Linda. Annie is played by none other than Danielle Harris, who played Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4 and 5. For such a great cameo, her character is as stupid and lazily written as any of the others. Such a waste. I'll at least give this movie the fact that they catch Michael watching them in broad daylight. They just dismiss him, which I think was a reasonable reaction. Unfortunately, that's the last logical thing that happens in this movie. It might be the only logical thing. Fast forward again to Halloween night, and here is where more of the uninspired filmmaking takes place. Bob and Linda get down to doing the dirty, although I will give them this time they don't drop any super creepy pedophiliac lines. Anyway, Bob leaves the room momentarily so that we can get the same exact death scene as the original film. Really? Don't tell me it's different because he's not in the damn kitchen. It's another friggin' rehash of a classic scene. Listen, Rob Zombie, I'm pretty sure Gus Van Sant taught us that if you're gonna remake a movie, don't actually just repeat the fucking movie. Seriously, is one line of this movie original?
Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter and let me suck her tits?
Shut up, shut up, shut up. Michael kills Laurie's parents faster than a desperate studio can say greenlit. In the meantime, Laurie's having forced dialogue with Tommy about the boogeyman, even though the concept is barely mentioned or explored.
What, your hatred of peanut butter? No, the boogeyman. I need some closure on this topic. I've heard.
There's no mystique to this version of Myers that even warrants the boogeyman conversation. Nothing in the film, rather, is boogeyman-like. The cinematography, the presence of the character, the theme is meaningless and forced just to remind us of the original. So Michael moves on to Annie, and it appears he gets the best of her as well. It's not long before Laurie begins to realize that things aren't feeling right. So yes, she goes to check things out, her friends are dead, Michael is coming after her, blah 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 blah, transition. So Michael carries off Laurie to reveal to her that he's her brother. He shows her some pictures, but with Laurie being about as stupid as humanly possible in this film, she can't put it together. She fights back, to which Michael realizes natural selection should have taken her out already, so why doesn't he? Meanwhile, we found out Annie is alive and well, because they need more people to kill in the sequel instead. Then finally, Loomis enters the picture and tries to subdue the towering Myers.
Was that the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, I do believe it was.
To which Myers just makes a stress ball out of Loomis's face. So Laurie grapples with Michael atop the house until he finally barrels them off the balcony. Oddly enough, Myers is apparently dead while tiny Laurie is alive and well. She gets a hold of Loomis's gun to finish off the big lug when he surprisingly awakes and grabs the gun. But don't worry, she shoots him point blank in the face and has the most nonsensical meltdown in film history. Now, we see some stupid home movie footage, and then finally, the movie ends. Good God, what a chore. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. The movie becomes so predictable and boring by that point that it's just a chore to sit through and get to the end of it. Rob Zombie just put together such a muddled mess in so many different ways that it's just a chore to watch, and that's the only way you can really describe it. If you look back on the original film and think of why it's so cherished, the reason for me is simple. It feels very real. The original film is grounded completely in a shrouded, realistic setting. All the mise-en-scene comes together to create something that identifies with us and our own life experiences. Babysitting, flirting, watching scary movies in the living room, it all feels authentic. The characters might not be the most fascinating people, but at least they're relatable and feel like real people, which is why the original Halloween is so effective. Everything seems plausible to actually happen in real life. It's only at the very end that some kind of supernatural element is clear, so that leaves the viewer with a shocking, mysterious feeling that provides for a lot of chills. Rob Zombie offers none of that complexity. Instead, he gives us a movie full of putrid dialogue, a horribly cliched backstory, and ineffective direction. It just shows that with a property like Halloween, it's really difficult to create something so well done in the first place. Rob Zombie might not be the worst director in the world, but his style lacks any of the proper subtleties needed to pull off a film like Halloween. I'm diagnosing Rob Zombie's Halloween with heart disease because this movie doesn't seem to have a heart whatsoever. I'm also diagnosing this movie with signs of Tourette's syndrome and hemophilia. But in the meantime, why don't you get ready for the next review? Because the next review is the holy grail of diagnosis cinema. That's right, we're talking about the sequel to this movie, H2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So, thank you for watching this video. If you like this review, please subscribe and like this video if you'd like to see more videos like this on a weekly basis. In the meantime, stay spooky and stay away from any cinematic atrocities such as this. And thank you for watching once again. I'm the Cinematologist, diagnosing cinema one movie at a time.